Do you self-sabotage? Do you follow your instinct? Do you even know what your gut feeling is? Do you limit how happy you are? If that is the case, the book that we are going to discuss is for you. It's called The Mountain is You by Brianna Wiest, and it has a very beautiful cover and very beautiful writing because Brianna Wiest is a writer, but also a poet. I personally really enjoyed the beginning of the book. It was packed with good information that I'm going to share now, and she has an amazing discussion on instinct. The end of the book is a little bit boring, so I'm just not gonna talk about those parts. Now I have to say, as much as I love a well-researched book, I also like content that is just enjoyable. I don't know about you, but you may know that this boring article has all of the correct information, but you also know that poets and artists write really cool stuff and make you enjoy the process of getting that information, right? I mean, at least that's my case. And The Mountain is You is like that. She talks about the fact that mountains are created when two tectonic plates get together and get pushed by very strong forces. So you need conflict, and you need problems, and you need pressure for mountains to grow. And it's the same thing in real life. If your life was perfect, you would just never grow. You could just get along with your life. So the whole process of approaching a mountain that is you, climbing it, overcoming it, and getting beyond it is a whole process of growth. So it's about enjoying and living the journey as much as it's about to reach the goal, which is self-mastery. The book is about self-sabotage. So it's these things that we do that keep us from achieving our potential and doing as much as we could do. She invites us to take another view at self-sabotage. We usually tend to see it as ways that we are screwing ourselves over, right? We're just not doing the thing you're supposed to do. But what she says is that actually we are feeling an unconscious need when we do that. And a typical example would be that we want acceptance from our family. And our family has certain beliefs. Let's say, for example, our family dislike a certain type of person, or they think that people with money are bad. And so because we want to get accepted, we try to stay away from being wealthy because we want to keep our family, or we stay away from certain people because our family doesn't like them. We are feeling a need for being loved and accepted by our family by self-sabotaging. And she says that we need to become conscious of what need we are feeling so we can feel it in a better way. And self-sabotage can also simply be the fact that at that time, when that need arrived and you tried to find a way to find it, you didn't have a better coping mechanism. So you basically did the best you could at that time, but now it's kind of a bad solution and you could find a better solution. And so she points something that I recognize in myself as well, is that sometimes we're afraid of something that's very clear, but it's kind of too scary to handle it. So instead we switch to a much more abstract and vague fear, and that way we are not tackling the subject, like we are avoiding the subject of our fear, but we still have something we fear and we can react. So for example, we might be afraid of confronting our parents about something that happened to us in the past, but that's really scary for to do, right? So instead we can take that general fear and make it like a diffuse fear against society. So we are afraid that society, this big, vague, abstract thing, is gonna do something to us. And then we kind of like defend ourselves from that fear that is an abstract one. That would be a typical example, for example, of this abstract fear. And as she says, you need to recognize what is this unconscious need and trying to get to the real root of why you are self-sabotaging yourself. And one way to do that is to look at what's triggering you. What is triggering the self-sabotage? What is triggering the fear? Because the closer you get to seeing what is starting your issue, the closer you're going to be to find the truth. It could be guilt, it could be fear, it could be longing, but there is some kind of unmet need that you satisfy in the process. Now, one really cool thing that I never really thought about in that way is that self-sabotage is a behavior, and it's the same thing as a skill. The same set of actions that can take you back is also a set of actions that could bring you forward at a different time, right? So for example, a coping mechanism might have helped you survive or live better at one point in time, but now it's stopping you. So technically, when we talk about sabotaging skills and like useful skills, we are talking about the same kind of behavior. So you are not supposed to continue treat them very differently. The stuff that's going to reinforce or break a bad behavior is also going to reinforce or break a good behavior. She then had several very calming pages about the concept of mindfulness. And because she's a poet, it's written extremely well, and I'm really sorry I cannot talk as well as she's writing. It's a bit of a shame. She talks about this Buddhist idea of getting in touch in our feelings and watching them, but without necessarily acting on them. You just let them be and let them inform you about what's happening in your life. And she talks about the fact that to do that, to become more aware of yourself, you need to practice, but you also need to reduce chaos in your own life. Because you can be keeping busy just as a way to be distracted. For example, you might be using social media to relax and unwind, but you can also be using it to avoid some things that's scaring you, right? Distraction on keeping busy can be a coping mechanism to avoid what's in front of you. And one way to handle it is just to simplify and sort and kind of like Marie Kondo your life. You want your place, your home to be tidy. You want your desk to be tidy enough, but you also want your daily routines to be a bit tidy. So the things that you do, you can ask yourself, do I really want this? And if you don't, you can let it go. You can simplify, like let go of a lot of things. On one aspect that she discusses is this idea of judgment and gossip. And it's really cool because I never heard someone putting it like that way. When you judge someone and you say, ooh, that person should not go into the gym because of the way they look, it's also a judgment that you're going to pass on yourself. And it's also a judgment that's going to stop you from doing the things you want to do. So it's not just that the judgment is fulfilling some unconscious need, but if you don't allow other people to do something, you're also not going to allow yourself to do it. And that's quite a subtle difference that I really like finding out about. And now we are going to a bit about Gary Hendricks, who is a researcher who, with other psychologists, found about the happiness tolerance. So apparently, we as people have a comfort zone, right? We have tendency to stay in our comfort zone, and when we get out of it, we get uncomfortable, we don't like it so much, and we tend to go back to our comfort zone. Well, the same thing happens with happiness. We have a happiness tolerance. And then when we get out of this happiness level that we're comfortable with, we feel uncomfortable. So if we are too unhappy, we are going to tend to go back to our happiness level. But if we are too happy, for example, if the situation is too great, our partners are too good, our friends are too good, or the situation is just going to be too good, this can be scary as well. And we might cut ourselves short to go back to the happiness tolerance that we had before. And that's an anecdote, but it's really true. I had a really nightmarish doctorate time. Like my PhD was really, really bad. I built a case because I figured I would probably never graduate because the situation was like so screwed up. And I worked myself to the ground and it was not working. But then my next job, my superiors were adorable and my colleagues were absolutely adorable. And I spent the first weeks just like terrified. I was like, this is not possible. Something bad is going to happen, right? I cannot be treated so well because I got used to be treated so badly that I was completely off. Like my level, what is normal, was like completely broken. But it's just great to see Brianna Wiest put it in words like that and being like, yes, you can be more happy, but you need to get ready to be uncomfortable or kind of like build a new comfort level where your happiness level is higher than it was before, which is a cool project in itself. Like as much as like the mountain is you and you want to climb a mountain, I think becoming generally comfortable with more happiness is a good way to improve your life. And here she discusses another really great point, which is the notion of instinct and gut feeling. So what she's saying is that our internal guiding systems have a tendency to whisper to us, right? They give us subtle hints and subtle informations until they eventually start screaming, right? When we break down in fear, anxiety, or with trauma, like it's a screaming of our internal systems. But our instinct is usually rather quiet. And achieving a more mindful state where we perceive this more quiet element of transmission is really essential if we want to become more aligned with our guides. And instinct is kind of a communication between the brain and our gut feeling. Because what we found in research is that some information about our body is actually stored in our gut. And so we kind of have a communication between both. But, and this is important, we tend to trust our instinct to make decisions about the future. But that's not how our gut feeling works. Our gut feeling can just say yes, no, hell yes, hell no to things that are happening right now in the present. So you cannot use your gut feeling to see if a job in the future is going to be great. You need to be at the job to get that feeling. And it's a weak feeling, okay? It's a little yes or a little no, not a big one. So you need to be aware of what it's telling you. And it's also not capable of knowing what your future is. Like you see a lot of books that say that you already know the answers are within you. You just have like to get deep inside you and you're gonna find out. But that's not really true. You have gut feelings about stuff, but your gut feelings are built from the experience that you have. And it's only ever judging stuff that happens in the present. So it's a very powerful mechanism and it's one that I personally want to be using more, but it's also not going to predict you the future or give you your life purpose. That's something you need to work on. But the point is, like, the point of climbing this mountain and the point of finding things out is that when you find something that feels right, you should have the gut feeling that is right. And it's gonna be a small gut feeling. And it's gonna be different from fears and other emotions, which is what she's also saying. Like, at the beginning, for many people, it can be difficult to see if it's a fear or if it's a gut feeling, and how to tell them apart. That's an example. I've been traveling alone quite a lot. I started when I had a very long relationship with a guy, and when it ended, I started traveling alone because I wanted to do it. And at the beginning, I would be scared about everything. I know I'm super comfortable. But for example, when I went to Poland, a lot of people told me like, wow, it's going to be dangerous, because they have this fear of what things are going to happen. But the truth is, I was never in danger. People were absolutely lovely. Poland is a very chill country. Like, I even had a guy I was paying to take a tram in one of the smaller cities, and the guy was like, you don't need to pay, like, there is not any controller. Like, that level of helpful. But the people I was telling, they could not tell the difference between the fact that it was a fear-based reaction, not a gut feeling based on the situation, because they had never traveled alone, so they didn't know how it would feel on the moment. The book then goes on about a bit of more of a filler material, and Brianna Wiest is a writer and a poet. She's not a psychologist, so I feel like if you have a higher level of traumas, for example, this book is not for you. But if your life is generally okay, you know, you have friends, job, a family, but you feel stuck, I think it's a very nice book to kind of reflect on your life and maybe go forward. If you need something more intense, the book Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Julie Smith is just incredible. I made a video on it and I think you should check it out.